never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. Only shooting stars break the mold.
Welcome to another episode of the NRL Allstars podcast. Barnesy here, your host of the Allstars podcast, ready for another team preview. This one, we're going to be doing the Dolphins. I should say Redcliffe Dolphins because I hate that they don't actually have an official place that they're from. It should be Redcliffe, but anyway. We've got Mikey on board from the SC Experience show and also the Allstars regular now, Mikey. Mikey, welcome back, mate.
Thanks, Barnesy. It's nice to add that badge to my sash. But yeah, I agree with you with the Dolphins. I don't like that either. Like, they need a name. Like, why change it? You got 16 teams in the NRL with the name before you. Anyways, let's not digress. But
well, they're not Prince. You can't just go one name. Like, you know, it's like these. It's like occasionally it was a very 90s thing, and then it sort of died. But like, you'd get these actors coming through that would go like one name and not have a surname and try and be Prince. And you see them like, I watch Cliffhanger with. Very side tangent here for everyone. Watch Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone the other night with the wife, and there's all the people in it. John Lithgow, Sylvester Stallone, blah blah blah, and then there's just a random one namer, and it's like, man, that was such a 90s thing. You can't do that. Can't get away with it. Got to have two names. It's the same for rugby league. You need to have two names.
100%.
But we digress. We won't speak about Cliffhanger on this show. We will speak about the Dolphins though. So I was actually very surprised, Mikey, at how many Dolphins there are that are relevant. And I think probably, to be fair, like last year and the year before, the Dolphins podcast shows were a little bit shorter just because they just didn't have as many players that were relevant or that were good. But I think it's a combination of two things this year. All of a sudden, they've got all these people back from injury, and it's made it a very deep roster where they've got a lot of players now fighting for positions, which they didn't have when they came into the competition. And they've also got a lot of guys that have stepped up and improved massively. Farnworth and Katoa obviously head of that. But were you surprised at how many were relevant when you were having a look?
Yeah, I alluded to you just beforehand because, like, when I got the call up to do the Dolphins one, like, you know, it's the first time doing the Dolphins one with you, and I'm just like, usually they're not a team that excites me until last year. They put on a crap load of points, and then this year, like, currently, I don't sit with any Dolphins, but there's about, I alluded to it just before we jumped on, that there's about 4 that I have very considered, and depending on where they're named, I could definitely go with them. But I think they can improve from where they left off last year. Yeah, they scored a lot of points, but, you know, they've been really impressive since they've come into the NRL, and I personally would have them I have them in my personal top 8. I think, you know, we usually talk, I know you talk about ranges in this. I'll probably have them for a 6 to 11 is a range. Would they surprise me if they maybe jagged to 5th? No, but I think there is a lot of other competition this year. I think it's very hard to pick your top 8 this year. But yeah, I think they'll be good and there'll be SuperCoach opportunity. Of course, a lot of these guys that went well last year are going to cost you some money. But it's crazy to say, I still think there is some value picks in it.
Yeah, I've got them 6 to 12, so we're very similar. That was my range for them. I can't see them getting in the top 4. I could see them getting into like 5th, maybe. But
I think there's maybe a 5% chance. Like, I don't think it would be. There'd be other teams that would surprise me more if they did. But look, they haven't made a top 8 yet, so let's be realistic. That's why I think their range is probably more realistically like, you know, let's just start off by them jagging their first top 8.
They were unlucky last year. Like, they were finished
Very
9th
unlucky.
last year, and they were very close.
Injuries.
But I think the two things for them this year that are going to be really relevant for SuperCoach, and it's going to be a prevalent theme throughout this show, is that they scored a huge amount of points last year, and that affected SuperCoach massively, and they had career years from multiple stars. And the whole thing with SuperCoach, as well as real life performance, is can you repeat that? Because there's both arguments. There's the argument that it was so many points and such a good career year from guys like Katoa and Farnworth that maybe they can't replicate that, and then all of a sudden SuperCoach scoring's down a little bit, and then all of a sudden, you know, they can't make the top 8 again, and they finish sort of similar. It's probably going to be, you know, one of those decisions you got to make when you're buying these guys to start with. But the draw, let's look at the roster first of all. I don't think they had a huge amount of ins, but I think that the quality ones that they got are pretty good. I actually quite rate some of their recruitment. Selwyn Cobbo is in a contract year. We're going to talk about him a lot, obviously. That's big, especially when they got Bostock out with the ACL injuries recovering from until maybe even mid-season or a little bit earlier. Morgan Knowles, now he's come over from St. Helens. A lot of people probably don't know him, but he's a middle forward and he's a 29-year-old, so he's not like one of these young UK forwards that are coming over. And then Brad Schneider is quite an astute purchase from your Panthers as well, because he's going to be good backup, comes from obviously a good system, and he's going to be, I think, vital for their depth. Now, the losses, they've got a lot of older guys that have kind of gone, that have been there for a while. Guys like Josh Kerr, Kenny Bromwich, and then also some guys like Mark Nichols as well retired. And then also some other fringe guys that have sort of been around for a while, like Junior Tupou and stuff. But really, it's probably a pretty set type of 17. And the other thing that too, Mikey, is that they've got those guys at the back. You know, Flegler hasn't played for the best part of 2 years. Tom Gilbert's had half a dozen games in 2 years himself. They got these guys back now into the rotation as well. So pretty settled roster with a lot of depth now.
Yeah, 100%. You definitely think, that their roster's going forward. They did well last year, and I think the people that they added make sense. I guess, which you're going to, talk about is the thing going into this year is one thing that hasn't changed is they're going in with some injuries to some key blokes, which could present opportunity at the start, but then also does mean that, potentially some of these matchups at the start could be a bit harder. But nonetheless, while they still got players like Herbie there, Isaiah Katoa, this team showed that they had points last year, and maybe they might not come out barnstorming from round one, but I do think that that's not going to change this year. I'd be very surprised if they aren't going to put points on. So points is great for SuperCoach, which is why, you need to be looking at some of these guys.
Let's talk about the draw then.
It's not bad.
Interesting. I like the first month quite a bit.
There's
3 out of
positives
4. Yeah, 3 out of 4 games are at Suncorp. The Broncos game's meant to be an away game, but it's at Suncorp anyway, so it makes no difference. So 3 out of 4 to start with at home. Sorry, I should say 4 out of 5, actually. They've got the Manly game down, but I think that's a neutral ground. They start off with Souths and the Titans. Now, Souths are obviously at the bottom of the ladder. I just avoided the wooden spoon last year, came home with a bit of a flurry, but they went poorly last year. And then the Titans. So 2 bottom 4 sides that they start off with. Obviously, both are expected to improve, but I had this conversation just on the last podcast on the Warriors. It's such a tight comp. So, you can say that, someone like the Gold Coast Titans are going to improve or whatever. They could still easily be a bottom 4 side just because of the quality of the competition. You've got to be better than them. South's had a mountain of injuries. They're coming in possibly healthy, although the Trell and Fafita have already got niggles. But will they give up points, though? To me, they look like they've improved their attack a lot, but South could still give up points defensively, and that's going to be good for SuperCoach. So both those 2 games at Suncorp to start with, South and the Titans, I really quite like. I like the matchups for guys like Herbie Farnworth in particular. And then they're away for the Sharkies, which is a bit of a tougher trek for them. And then home against the Broncos, who are obviously, going to be gunning for another grand final. But, the defending premiers, they have had some shootouts with the Dolphins in recent years where there've been a lot of points in those games, even when the Dolphins have lost. So when you're looking at points, it's pretty good. They hit Manly and then they've got a bye. The round 6 bye is not ideal, but it is very manageable. And then it gets a bit harder. Then they've got the Panthers, and then they've got the Warriors away in New Zealand, and then the Storm and the Bulldogs, although both at home. So you're looking at it and going, wow, the start of it's really nice. Can you sort of look at a strategy, Mikey, with that draw and go, you know what, I might rent some of these guys until round 6 and then offload them before they have to play, Penrith Warriors away, Storm and Dogs, because that's a pretty tough month of football for them, So, and I think that you can do that. But the first month, I quite like it.
Yeah, you potentially could, but then if you delve a little deeper, and I know we, shouldn't really talk about the bye rounds this early, but when we come to the bye rounds, the Dolphins actually, I'm not sure if they're the only one, but looking at it here, they play all 3. So if you did rent them, get rid of them for that Panthers, Warriors, Storm, Bulldogs, all of a sudden, you're 2 weeks out from the first bye round. Where you're going to want these guys? So, to be honest, where their buys play, the round 6 isn't practical, but I've currently got some guys in my side from round, that are going to have a round 3, 4 buy. I don't mind the early buy if you think that player's going to, come out, score lots of points, then that's going to retract people from getting them. And then you can say, I can just wait an extra week before their price goes up. Yeah, but you might have missed out on a couple of times. So, Yeah, they've got a bye in round 13 and then their third and final buys in round 21. I actually don't mind that at all. And just looking at it, once you get past it, that Panthers, New Zealand, if you don't have many Dolphins, you'll be looking to bring some of them in that, aren't going to play Origin just because their coverage is going to be so good. But, yeah, I don't mind that opening draw at all. I think that South's one, even if, both teams are going to be improved, that could be like a 30-28 kind of game. That could be a lot of points in that game. So, yeah, it's not a bad start at all, especially to take some backline plays from the Dolphins. I don't mind it at all.
I keep thinking the round 13 is the big buy round, but
It's 12, 15, and 18 this year.
I stuffed up the Warriors podcast. I'm going to have to apologise to the listeners. That last episode, the Warriors episode, I was thinking that round 13 was the big buy round because it often is. And it's got me. It's meant to be round 12. So
Just
I
a shout out
apologise
to
about
this.
that to the listeners.
SuperCoach stats, like on where they show you the draw, they put a red box on the left-hand side where the buy rounds are going to fall to. So it makes it easier when you're planning ahead.
Yeah, it's much easier now that I look at it and I can see that box that you're talking about. So 12, 15 and 18. That makes sense. And I stuffed up, guys. I'm sorry, guys and girls, that I said that round 13 is a big buy round. If you do get Leka Halasima, like I said on the Warriors show, it's still great, even though, that round 13 isn't the big buy round that I was talking about that they play. We digress, though. It's time to talk players. And I think, obviously, before we do, we need to mention we're not going to talk about Plath. We're not going to talk about JMK. We're not going to talk about Bostock. They're three players that were relevant at times last year, particularly Plath. He was really good, but they're injured at the moment. Maybe Plath comes back reasonably early, but he'll still probably miss round one. So we're going to put those guys to the side because there's just a mountain of players to talk about. And when we're looking at the guns to start off with, there is no bigger gun than Herbie Farnworth. And Jesus Christ, what a season from Herbie. One of the more dominant SuperCoach centre wing seasons that we've seen. He's got an 825,600 price tag. So that should tell you how good it was. I will say, in the past when we have seen seasons like this, Mikey, so Semi Radradra comes to mind. Even a Micah Sevo in his prime, with a massive run of games. But really, Semi Radradra is probably the last one that I remember that I actually started with where he was like 700 and something thousand. And it didn't work out. And a lot of the time when you're spending in today's, inflation market of SuperCoach prices, 750K plus at centre wing to start with, there's a lot of times where it doesn't work because you're paying the premium price. Herbie, last 4 years, has had averages of 56, 62, 74, and 84 points. Now, 84 points made him one of the best players in the game out of any position. It was a crazy season. And then you have a look at it and you go, wow, these numbers are even crazier than it looks. 4 out of 19 games, he had tons, but that included a 150. Almost half his games were 80 plus in scoring. 89% of his games he went 60 plus, and that's insane for a centre wing, and it was because he had pretty much almost a 60 average of base power. And when you've got almost a 60 average of base power for a centre wing that's going to get tries and attacking stats, it's just crazy how they can score. 12 tries in 19 games is what he did, which included 8 in a row from round 7. He went 10 of 13 games from that round 7. Now, it's a crazy strike rate when you look at him. 10 of 13 games to finish off the season, scoring a try in that run before he got his injury with his hamstring. Games scoring 8 tries in 23 games in 24. When you're going through his try scoring, that's a big drop off. 8 games in 23 games in 2024 season. Then you have a look at the year before. He did 13 games in 23 games in 2023, but it's obviously a ways off. He's 12 tries in 19 games at the moment when you're looking at strike rates. So basically career strike rate. It's crazy when you look at that and you just sort of go, look, I don't think he can replicate the tries. He's too expensive. And then most of the time it's easy just to leave him and put him in the can't touch him from round 1 bucket. But you look at the other statistical categories in SuperCoach scoring and geez, only 4 games without double-digit tackle break points. Only 1 game where he didn't have an offload. It's crazy the tackle breaks and the offloads that he had. He could just not score tries, Mikey, and he would still be a really good centre wing. So I'm kind of torn, mate, because I had to spend a lot of time there. I'm sorry for talking so much, but there was just so many numbers there that are all just beyond elite. And it's like, man, he could not replicate some of those. And as long as he's doing the other stuff, then it doesn't really matter. He's still going to be really good. And if he drops off from an 84 average to a 78 to 80 average sort of thing, you'll take that because it's so elite and it's centre wing. I don't think anyone's going to really pay up in the masses, so he's going to probably be a pod. Where are you on Herbie Farnworth?
It is a very hard decision to come to, and just to quickly rule out, he's actually not a pod. He's in 22.5% of sides, which is huge, and it's just people that, like, when you talk about in each position, players that can absolutely burn you and make your season, you're talking about guys in fullback like Reece Walsh when he went on his run, Tedesco. They're guys like that you have to have Cleary when he's on fire, Hines when he's on fire. Last year, if you didn't have Herbie Farnsworth, which I didn't for a lot of it, it was the most painfulest ride. And then, you know, a lot of people jumped on late and then he got injured. But he's just a guy that you had to own because you're like, I was being ignorant. I was like, I know you're in the same boat. They're like, he can't keep scoring tries. Yeah. That try scoring run has to come to an end, and it didn't. And the fact is, people couldn't tackle him last season. They just could not tackle him. He just made it look so easy. And he was like, I don't think that's going to change. Obviously, like, you know, let's talk like, you know, when Penrith were dominant in those years, eventually people work and mark your number. But I think he's honestly just that good. Like 820K, it is a steep price to pay. But like when you look at it, like he scored in 89% of his games, he scored over 60 points. And the fact that Isaiah Curtoa, like the combo that they have and the way he feeds in and sends a ball out there, and now you add the fact that they have Cobbo on that left wing as well, that is going to be their main attacking side. And then we talk about, you know, opening with Souths and Gold Coast. It'd be scary. Like he might pump, like say he pumps out double tons, like he pumps out 100 and 100 again.
It could easily do it.
And then he goes to the Sharks Broncos, but then all of a sudden you're going, shit. And then you know, most of us, like this year, I think with the build and molds of centre wing, you're going to be starting a 700K minimum. So my thing is more so fitting it into there are a lot of good guys at 700K that I really like, you know, your Carrazes, your Holmes, your Eros. So I'm just like, price-wise, I can't really afford to go off Farnsworth and a 700, but in the budget, I could do two 700K guys. So as it currently stands, I don't have him, but the more I talk about it and think of what he could do, I'm scared not to have him. He definitely scares you not having, but at 825K, does he start a little bit slower? It's just more so that I kind of prefer for 125K less, I could have like an Eero potentially, who Sharks have a good starting draw. That's just kind of what I'm juggling with. I'm more coming around to the fact that I'd probably prefer to start with Herbie over Carraz, with Carraz having that round 3 bye. I know Dolphins have a round 6 bye, but you're getting South's Gold Coast out of it at the start. Yeah, I've been trying to avoid talking about him too much because I know I'm just going to convince myself to grab him, but it's just when you crunch your numbers, like if you had the money to do it, like do it. Like you could definitely go him and then, you know, stack a couple of like a 600 guy, a 500K guy. I think you can make it work, but to me, yeah, it's about getting team balance. It's not the fact that he's not a guy. You're going to want to have him, so does the injury play a part too,
You sound
Barnesy?
very torn, Mikey. You sound very
I am,
torn.
but like I feel like if you don't have him in your side, there's no way that you don't want him in your side. You're torn. It's just about balance and making it happen. There's guys like, you know, like to me, like I have to have Haas. I really want to have Cleary. So then I have them and then you build around them. And your centre wing's usually your most flexible part where you can switch and swap. So not in my current side, but he could depending the cheapies. And to just throw another spanner in the works, I just got a message that Tom Chester's done his MCL, so that's now going to make it harder to grab a guy like Farnsworth, if that is true. Because I heard whispers yesterday, but today it seems more legit.
Yeah, no, it's been confirmed.
So there you go. There's another cheapy shot.
Down.
So,
although he's meant to be probably okay for round 1 still. So if they really believe in him,
he gets injured all the time. Macassini's not been running on the trial starting, so like a few of these cheapies are starting to get shot down now, which are going to make it hard to go with the current build I have now, and I've got two 700K centre wings. So then, how am I meant to get Herbie without dropping the other? So this is the big debate in the offseason. But if you were going to take one gun centre wing and it's Herbie, I don't think you can argue with that because I think he can deliver. And if he didn't, there are other things you can do. There are a plethora of 700K guys you can go to, but
yeah, I think in a vacuum he's the best guy. And that's it. That's the tough thing at centre wing. He's still going to be the best guy in my opinion for this year. So it's really hard. And then you can probably look at it 2 different ways on getting him versus not getting him. One way is I'm not going to get him because at least he doesn't play Origin. You know, it's harder with guys like Cleary because you get around not having Cleary, and then you get to sort of round 6 or something and you go, okay, I've got to start saving for Cleary, but when's the right time to get him? And then things happen, injuries happen, and then you get to round 8 or 9 and you're like, he's going to be off for Origin soon. Can I really buy him now for 3 or 4 games? Whereas with Herbie, at least you're not going to have that issue come up. And the opposite there as well is that you can be a bit strategic about it and say, look, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to try and get a head start and bank on the Dolphins scoring points to start with early like they did last year. And if it doesn't work, what I can do is plan to just burn a trade and go, before he loses money off that 8K price tag, I'm going to bank the Souths and Gold Coast Titans games in, because even if he ends up with a big break even, he could still average, 65 or something, and it's not the worst in the world. And you get to use that 825K before you lose money and fix up your centre wing with 2 trades. So there's that option to do it as well if it doesn't work. I think there is parachutes out of it, and I don't think this year is the same as other years, because I would always normally say 825K centre when you can't do it. But I do think that he's a different beast. And I think that if you look at it and go, well, if he was the best second row forward in the competition, would you pay it? If he was the best fullback in the competition, would you pay it? And we're paying it now for those guys. And I think there is an argument that someone like Herbie has put himself in that top echelon of players where you just throw position out the window, because he's doing the things that the top forwards do. His power stats with his offloads and tackle breaks are off the charts. They're like top of the competition when you combine those. So his floor is basically a second row forward that's elite at 60 plus, base power. And the scoring is just on top. So, I think that you can do it. And I wouldn't normally say this about a centre wing, but I just think that you just throw convention out the window with him. And the worst case scenario is that you burn that trade early to get him back out, and you can do it that way.
Just one last thing to add, Barnes. His highest price last year was $915,000, and his low price was $687,000. So he was that consistent. He didn't go under that price point. So you go, all right, I'm going to wait for him to drop 100K. But realistically, I don't think he might not fall under that 700K mark unless he comes out and does a 30 and a 30. Then all of a sudden he could lose a plethora quick. But he's got good base. He's got good floor. He's always been that, centre wing, and he's improving that has a good base. But now with the way that team lines up and the structure around it, he's got so much more base power and more attacking upside. Like, he's a centre wing that can pump you out a 150. He's pumped out 176 before. Last year, 150 was his highest score. But, he's a kind of guy that can get you the higher tons more consistently as a centre wing, and there's not too many of them that can. And he doesn't need heaps of tries to do it.
No, he doesn't. So I think that's like, if you've got a guy that relies on tries and he's just scored a heap of tries, that's a big red flag. But because he can score in every single way and he's got a good work rate. And I'll tell you the other thing that I like about Herbie, both in real life and also for SuperCoach. You have these outlier seasons that happen sometimes, and they kind of tell a story when you look at what's led up to it. But with Herbie, he has specifically for like 4 years now improved not just his scoring, but really consistently improved his game. Like, you have a look at it, his tackle breaks and offloads have gone up. His attack has gone up. He's been better at setting up his winger as well. His line breaks have gone up. He's very gradually just improved as a player overall and just worked harder, which is great. It's amazing for him and the Dolphins, but for SuperCoach, it's the type of story that you want to see because it gives you a bit of belief. Whereas if you've got guys that have gone, the roller coaster of 45, 55, 70 average, 60 average, and then they pump out an 84, you go, well, I don't really think the trajectory is he's going to do that again. With Herbie, it kind of looks like that he will. So, yeah, I like it. And I think this is a year where you've got more money at your disposal than normal. The cap's gone up a little bit. There's more cheapies than last year in mid-range guys. I think you can do it. Is he a must? Of course not. Is he an option? 100%. And he could be an option that really makes a difference between the teams that are the haves and have-nots again to start this year, like it did last year when Mikey said he almost got to $1 million and people couldn't get him in. So, yeah, I'm considering it. We've got to move on. We're going to talk the hammer now. Tabuai-Fidow is going to come in at 702,300. Quite surprisingly, I think that people thought that he had a bit of a quieter season, but it was actually a career year for him. 72. Quite similar to Herbie. The last 3 years he's gone 59, 67 and 72. He's gradually gotten better. He's been a big part of why the Dolphins have scored so well in their real life point scoring, I should say. But He's fullback only, Mikey. He's in that elite price category, and there's a lot of fullbacks, obviously, that are both cheaper and also more expensive that you can get in still. He scored 22 tries. Now, I know we all see him as a try scorer, and we just talk about Farnworth having a big strike rate. The 22 tries, the prior best for the Hammer was 15 tries. So he is a try scorer, but he's never done in the 20s like that before. And unlike Herbie, you're going to get like a low 40 type base power. And, it's a big difference because Herbie's 50% better in his base power. So he doesn't need the tries. If the Hammer's not getting the tries, you are going to get some low scores. But, I mean, I know I stuffed up the guess that Farnworth with a pod. I don't reckon I'm going to be wrong in saying that the Hammer is a pod. I reckon he's going to be a massive pod. So if you like that starting draw, Hammer is somebody who could go 3 to 4 tries against the Gold Coast Titans in round 2 at home.
Yeah, 100%. For me, like all of us, like I know there's been this chat, and I know you don't agree with it. Like, there's potential chance that he could be shifted into the centres, although, as you said before, he plays left side, so it doesn't make 100% sense. But, Trifle is very good. We're going to get to him. But if there is a
we'll
world
talk
where,
about them both at once because we're going to have to because to sort of explain
they're going to affect each other.
The Hammer,
and at the same time, if he was to go to centre and then get switched back and all of a sudden he's got dual, I think you could go, like, I don't mind him at the centre wing, but the fullback is absolutely stacked this year. There are so many mid-range picks, and to be honest, if I'm going to spend $700,000 on another fullback, I'm going to take the risk on Tom instead of someone like the Hammer. But like you said, we're talking about, Dolphins and options here. The Hammer's at 3.3% ownership, which is pretty good by his standards, and we both already alluded to it. I think they're going to score lots of points this year. So if I think they're going to score lots of points, so I think he can keep up a 20 strike rate. It wouldn't surprise me, but try scoring's his game, and they've got a good formation to getting him into holes, and so he's going to score lots of tries. He's the kind of player that you want to have for these small runs. But if the Dolphins were to go out of form or there were some injuries in that centre position, like if Herbie went down, like they potentially probably would shift the Hammer to centre and bring Trifuller in, which is kind of what they did last year in part. So Hammer's not one for me, but to switch down to Trifuller, he's a guy that I've been in and out of my side, but obviously he's only an option if he starts, Barnesy.
Yeah, of course. And look, Fuller's 559,000, and I've been surprised at how many people think that it's a certainty that Fuller's starting, which, I'm not saying that I'm surprised if he starts. Like, I think it's an option. If I were to guess now, though, I would say he doesn't. And it's just, you alluded to it as well. Farnworth and the Hammer play the same side of centre. And, particularly the Hammer hasn't got a lot of centre games under his belt. Some representative ones there, a few here and there for the Dolphins. And to change sides for him is a pretty big deal. And obviously you're not going to move Farnworth. So I don't understand why you would make such a big switch to get Fuller in. Now, Fuller is an exciting player. He's an electric player. But the other thing, too, is with him that we do this in rugby league all the time where we get so caught up in the excitement and the big games from someone and how fun they are as well because he's a try scorer that you forget the fact that we don't actually have a big sample size for him. He only played 4 games last year. Yeah, he averaged 88 points, but he played 4 games. And the year before, he only played 11, and he's only got a career of 16 games. 16 games in the NRL is all we've seen Fuller do, and that's just not a big sample size at all. He may very well come in and average a solid 60, which at his price point actually isn't going to really make money. So it's one of those things you've got to decide, I guess, a TLT, if he gets named at 1, do you want to go with Fuller? And, I mean, that completely kills Hammer, I think. Although I will say with Hammer, his high score last year was playing centre. He started centre the last 2 games. He went 55 and then 135. And 135 was his top score out of his 3 tons that he had. So, he can score big at centre still. But like you mentioned, we're going to have to wait half a dozen games into the season until he gets that centre wing eligibility, unless he starts at centre for round 1, and they should update it for that week before kickoff happens. So I'm going to put a line through the Hammer. I'm not interested. And to be honest, I don't think that we're going to be interested in Fuller because I don't think he's going to get named at 1. But if he is, he becomes an option. But I will probably steer away just because of, like I said, the sample size and the other fullbacks. Fa'alongo is arguably a better option to go for that's cheaper by a little, and he's a mid-range type of guy. And there's plenty of really good elite guys in the 700s, like a Drinkwater, who has a really good draw and so forth when you're comparing a Hammer at fullback. So I'm probably off them both, but they're both still options. So I'm going to sort of go back on myself a little bit.
Yeah, well, Fuller costs, $5.59, so he costs a bit more than Kinney and he costs a bit more than Fulongo. I've considered going him over it just because he's a bit more of a pod, and it wouldn't surprise me if he outscored both those guys I just mentioned in those first 2 rounds. Like, I just like the fullback position at the right price. Like, I know Hammer's 700,000, but this guy's I know we haven't got a massive sample size, but in the games that he's played, he's a try scorer. He loves scoring tries. It's like Jai Gray for the Rabbits, just small little weaves through the line, and he's just a good support player. So I definitely think if he got a good crack at that fullback jersey, and the Dolphins are scoring points, he's going to be off the back of it. He's shown he's got a ceiling before. He scored 113 in those small games last year, and he averaged 88, and it was a small sample size. But I am keen on him, but at the same time, if money's going to come a crunching, I am going to take like a Keeney or a Fulongo over someone like him. But I'm definitely interested. He's definitely on my watch list. And I definitely think he'd come in my team at some point this year if he stays at fullback, especially over the Origin period. Like, he's going to be fullback over the Origin period.
Yeah, that's true. And that might be where he can add some value as well. It also, like, we had a quick mention of a big balls pod play of Avarillo if he gets that centre spot, because he's gone 48, 54, 59 threes in a row. And I thought he looked really good last year. And Avarillo had a really good run in the middle of the season where he scored 78, 84, 86, 69, 79, 57, 78, and 73. That was an awesome stretch where he averaged high 70s across 8 games, and he looked amazing. And I bring Avarillo up early because we're still talking about the guns, because he almost got there at 59 average, but because it's relevant to Fuller as well, because Avarillo's the odd man out if Hammer goes to centre, right? And this is the other thing, are they really going to drop Avarillo, who has been pretty solid for them and I think found a home at centre and improved a lot? And in the middle of the season, actually showed himself to be a capable Supercoach option on a run, where I wouldn't start with him round 1, but certainly during the year he might become an option. That's the other thing, Mikey. Avarillo is no slouch. He was pretty good for him. He even was pretty good for Supercoach in that middle period, and he would need to be dropped out of the side to accommodate Fuller for round 1.
Yeah, 100%. Is 0.6% ownership, so absolute super pod. Like, in the end of the day, if they start hot, they're scoring points. Players like this are going to be sneaky options. And 579, it's not a bad price for a mid-ranger. I think what would probably stop you from getting him, and I know we're still talking about the guns, probably a perfect segue into him, is Cobbo at 520k. If I'm going to want to take a Dolphin around that price, I'd rather spend 60k less and take Cobbo, who's outside of Herbie. I know there's positives and negatives to that statement, but, Bostock still scored a lot of tries down that wing. Like, tries are going to be scored down that one. Herbie's just a big tackle bust. He's got the offload, so there's going to be a lot of time. Maybe if you can't start with Herbie, if you grab Cobbo, at least you might still get a piece of the pie.
It's a good point. We're going to talk about Cobbo in a minute. There's just so many places to talk about. We're just all over the shop because it's so hard, because there's so many options, and it's also hard to see how they're all going to fit in. And
all of them are moving pieces. Like, you can't talk about one without talking about the other, because it's going to all affect your decisioning when it comes 100%. To picking these guys.
Well, you know who else it's going to affect? The next gun that was on the list, and we will get to Cobbo in a sec, but the next gun that was on the list was Katoa. And Isaiah Katoa, 639,300, had a breakout year. And I think, in prior podcasts, we've kind of sort of said, look, Cleary, then, Hughes and Hines are the elite halfback guys, and then you got Mitchell Moses as a cheap guy. And we didn't mention Katoa. And I feel a little bit bad about not mentioning him, but I still don't think that he's in the league of the other guys just yet for Supercoach. For me, he had a 65 average, and that went up from a 40 average the year before, where he was playing, 77 minutes a game, so basically a full season. And the year before, he was 37 points per game, again, playing 69 minutes a game. So most of them were full games that he was playing. So he's really shot up. And you can see why, though, because in real life, he's developed immensely. He's future Origin player potentially. He was amazing last year. He was a fantastic halfback. But so much of what he does on the field, Mikey, doesn't directly translate to his Supercoach scoring as much. He's a really good organiser. He's run that team to a point that they can score big points, but he's getting a lot of try contributions. A lot of his numbers of his 65 points per game too are based on his try assists and forced dropouts and kicking games. So it's hard, because when you look at how he's come about getting that 65 average in that career year, I think that a lot of people will go, look, he's young and he's got a lot of improvement in him still. Look at the leap that he just made. It was huge, 25 points per game, and in real life he was amazing. It's very true, but he may very well sort of stagnate now, even though he improves on the field, because when you look at his numbers and break them down, half of his scores are actually sub 60. And when you break it down more, only 8 of his 24 games were actually 70 plus. That's about 33%. So really, he's all about the tries. He needs them to be scoring a lot of points, and he needs to be getting the assists for those. But how many tries is he scoring? He's only scored 2. So I guess when you look at silver lining, if he's coming off a 2-try season and average 65, he could easily get to 5 or 6 tries if he runs the ball a little bit more. It just hasn't really been his game as much. I love Katoa as a real life option, and as a SuperCoach fantasy option, I just think that he's probably in that 65 to 70 range now, even if he improves on the field. And I just think the other guys are better. But, geez, he improves so much, Mikey. I'm not going to rule out that I'm completely wrong, and it starts to translate more to SuperCoach. He starts running the ball. His 2 tries go to 6 or 7 tries, and then all of a sudden he's averaging 75 plus, and he's better than Mitchell Moses, and even better than maybe even a Hines and stuff. Like, he's just got that much talent in him. Could you start him round 1, though? Because I just can't get around it looking at it as an option with the other halfback options and all the cheapies that are available as well.
You just hit the nail on the head of what I was about to say. Was the main thing is the cheapies. If this was a year where we didn't have these halfback cheapies, then I could potentially, start with one of Cleary and Hines and then chuck Katoa on the bench. But then you've got Sam Walker at a similar price at Hughes. It's just, there's so many contentions for that halfback spot. Like, I know he's not a 5'8", but if he was somewhat dual, then I'd easily plug him as your main starter at 5'8", not really think about it too much. But he's at 7% ownership, which surprises me.
I'm very surprised at that.
It's pod territory, but I would have put him at like 3%. But the thing is, this guy can definitely improve. I know what you said about the kind of the score breakdown, but 42% of his games in the 40 to 59 mark, only 4% in the 20 to 39, and none of his games were under 20 points, which is good. Because, some of these halves, can bang out like a 15 or a 16 in the day. Mitchell Moses has done it before. And the thing
his
too,
base power only just goes into the 30s though as well. So, I mean,
yeah.
He's been really consistent hitting that middle area, not really a lead a lot and not low a lot. But the problem is that he's doing that by getting those assists and things as a halfback, because his base power is only in the low 30s, so it's not great as a base.
If Isaka ever goes down during the season, all of a sudden he's got the kicking tee, and they're still scoring a lot of points like they did last year, then all of a sudden there is a lot of value in having him. And I know this might sound vanilla, but a lot of these Dolphins, unfortunately, fortunately, they play all 3 buys. So they're going to be guys that you say, don't think I can start with them, but I definitely will be looking at them later, because someone like, I know, Katoa could be a bolter for Blues if there was a lot of injuries to occur, but he's someone like, if the Dolphins scoring points, he's got a good combination with Herbie. He's someone that I'm definitely interested in, but yeah, just there's too many other options to start with him. Like, I couldn't do a cheapie and him. And, when I'd prefer just to find the money and go Hines or Cleary, or I'd probably take Sam Walker over him. So that he probably puts me at that 4th halfback that I would look at.
I'd put Sam Walker over him as well. And I'd tell you what, in draft, you get some value in draft, I reckon. I reckon you could get him if you've got one of those middle picks in draft. Yeah, you could probably get him once the other halfbacks go down, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
You mentioned Asako. We're going to talk about him. Asako is 609,200, and I'm going to just be such a backhanded compliment, or compliment sandwich maybe is a better term. Like, he keeps scoring well. I really don't like him as a player, but when you look at the numbers, he gets to benefit so much from that Dolphins team and their attack and how good it is, and how good guys like Herbie Farnworth have been, how good Katoa has been, because he kicks the goals. His stats from his goal kicking are ridiculous in how much he gets to benefit from that, right? But it's also why he's such a good SuperCoach option. He, over half his games were 20 plus SuperCoach points in goal kicking. He averaged 19.5 points per game for SuperCoach just from his goal kicking. It doesn't include the negative with his misses, but it's still around 18 points per game if you take that into account as well. That's like almost a third of his scoring is just from goal kicking, which is ridiculous, right? Like, it's almost cheat code. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. But that's his scoring. But it also gives way to why he's such a shit option so much, because he just doesn't do much
Rocks
of
and
anything
diamonds.
else. He's got he's got a work rate that's not great. 7 of 24 games, 40 or under points. That is a lot of games that you're going 40 or under. 7 of 24. And he's getting saved by that goal kicking. Now, obviously, they're going to have goal kicking still a thing, Mikey. We're going to still kick for goal despite V'landys and Abdo trying to change all the rules and make it a circus. It's still going to be there. So he's going to get these points still. Do the Dolphins score as much? Because, if you think that they might score less because they had such a great year as an attacking team, then maybe his kicking goes down, 6 points per game, which is more towards the average of NRL kickers for SuperCoach. And then all of a sudden that really hurts him because he's not going to make that up. The other thing as well is that if you've got Cobbo and Farnworth together, you can make an argument that the ball's going to go that way a lot more, particularly after Farnworth's season last year. And then you go, well, he scored 11 tries last year. He scored 12 the year before. He had a massive 24 tries in 2023, but he's not going to replicate that. Could he score 2 or 3 tries less just because they've got a bit less plays going that side? And I think that could be the case. So you can make an argument that, he's averaged 62 points per game and 63 points per game the last 2 years. It's pretty solid. But he could be down for a downturn and go into the 50s and turn into a non-gun. And you're going to pay a reasonable price for him at $600K plus. So I don't like Osako. I don't think that he's going to get the ball on that side a lot. And I just don't like that so much of his point scoring is so reliant on his goal kicking.
So I guess that just determines the fact that if you think they're going to score lots of points, and he's the kind of player that goes on these runs, and you try and nab him for these runs, and he could do it right from the get-go. And at times they are going to have to go the other side to trick the opponents, because you're going to, when you're marking the Dolphins, shit, they're going to go that side. And goes up against Alex Johnson first round, then he'll go up against potentially the new Titans rookie if he gets that left wing spot. So, it's gonna make things interesting. Like 609, like it isn't super expensive. I think there could be potentially a little bit of value but you'd want him to go on a run from the start. He's actually in 8% of sides, which is crazy. And then you could go, why would I go him when I could go Cobbo for 80K cheaper on that left wing, which I think would be a lot better than 100%. But obviously, if they're scoring lots of points, Isako's got the benefit of the goal kicking where, if Cobbo's not scoring any tries, his floor's going to be a lot lower. So that's kind of what you'd be getting if you're paying the extra 80,000, but you'd also be hoping that the Dolphins are going to do what they did last year. So someone I wasn't interested in, when you look at it, I don't mind it. Like if you've got the room for a 600K guy, like, I was very hot on Brian To'o, maybe a stab on Osako could potentially be better. But I think as things stands, like, I'd just prefer to take Cobbo of him on that left-hand side. And I think 80K is going to be huge to start the season at least. But Osako's going to be another guy that you'll keep pinned up on that board that you're going to have to take notice of. If the Dolphins are just go on that run where they're scoring points, you're going to have a look at him. But at least by that point, you can see how they're distributing, what side they shift to, how many tries they're scoring on the left, how many tries they're scoring on the right. So we'll get a bit more knowledge. But could you take a flyer on him from the start? Probably more than you, Barnesy. I think you can. But
I think you can as well. I don't want to, I've given him a massive backhander, but look, at the end of the day, points are points. It doesn't really matter if he scores with kicking. I just don't like it, but he does. And he's an option. I don't want to sound like I'm saying he's not an option. He's 100% an option. It's expensive, but not too expensive, like you said. I personally prefer other options. When you can get a Brian To'o cheaper, when you can get a Cobbo cheaper, or when you can just try and find money to go up to some other options. And there is, I guess he did have the outlier year of 77 points a game in 2023, but he just seems like a low 60s guy to me, which is what he has been really when he's been good. He's been a low 60s guy. And he had the 3 tons during the year. He can do it, but it's hard to pick. And I'm going to throw out some scores here to finish on Osako. This is how hard it is to pick, okay? Round 5, Gold Coast Titans, great matchup, 114 points. Brilliant. That's what we want. He plays them again that year, 44 points at home at Suncorp. Not what we want. And you're going to play him for all those. So you're going to cop some of those. You look at some of the other scores, like he played the Tigers early in the season last year, scored 30. It's crazy. And then you look at some of the other big scores that he's got, and you go, look, he played the Raiders and he scored 110. what are you going to do here with this guy? And the answer is early on, you're going to play these guys every week, right? So Asako's numbers last year to start off with, 96, 39, 30, 34, 114. It was great to get that 114, but geez, it was a bloody hard slog to go through the 3 weeks of 30s to get there. And you're going to play him for all those at 600K. Very hard. Whereas, Brian Toto might not turn up at all in that first 4 or 5 weeks, but he's not going to give you any 30s either. And I would rather that and wait for Brian Toto's ton and know that I'm not getting the 30s, just as an example. So he's an option, mate, but geez, it's hard to pick with him. And I'm with you on Cobbo, so let's talk about him. I quite like Cobbo just because of the price point. And I will say with Cobbo as well, 524,000 is getting cheap-ish. In the 400s, to me, it's pretty cheap for a good centre wing. 524,000, it's a good price. But it's a contract year. So, I mean, look, he's looking slimmer than ever. He's training the house down. We get all this preseason talk about him. And I believe it, mate, because he needs a deal. He needs to stay in the NRL. He's got a bad reputation of being lazy, and he did not play well last year for Brisbane at all. Only 6 tries in 15 games and 6 tries in 19 games the last 2 years. The effort hasn't been there. 19 tries in 21 games in 2023, though. And that could be what he's looking at this year in a contract year outside Herbie Farnworth.
Yeah, look, I like him. I've had him in and out of my side. I currently don't have him. Latromit's just starting to scare me with this injury. And if I've got 2 700K centre wings. If I got to shed one to get money, it'll be him straight down to Cobbo. So he's very, very close to my side. He's the next centre wing. If I need a centre wing, it's Cobbo. The price point is good. I think he can hold a value where if he doesn't go as well as you think, I don't think he's going to drop too much from that price. But there's also that upside if they're scoring those points and being next to Herbie. There were games, you saw it from Bostock last year. There was games where he scored pretty shit, but there were games where all of a sudden he was on a hat-trick. And then you can see that going for Cobbo as well. And like you said, you see these players that, they go to another level when they're playing for a contract. And he's at this point of his career where he has to have a good year. He's changed clubs to have a fresh change. And look, he's at 17% ownership, and for good reason. That could definitely be a lot higher. It definitely could, but there are so many options in this centre wing at all. And to be honest with you, I really like those first 2. When you're picking it, we want to start well. Starting well, if you're a good SuperCoach player, starting well just sets you up to do so many things. It sets you up to save trades. It sets you up to plan a bit better. It sets you up to be able to take more risks. I think the past 4 years I've played recovery, and I've recovered well. But, it'd be nice to play from the front for once. So someone like Cobbo with those first 2 games could go well. And then, Sharks-Broncos, but Broncos is a grudge match. Maybe that match is good for him. And don't forget, the Dolphins play a lot of games at Suncorp. And what stadium is he used to playing at? Suncorp. To be honest, the more I talk about it, he'd probably come into my side. I'm looking at it now. But I've got too many attachments to some of these other guys. But yeah, great option. To be honest, I said it before when we quickly spoke about him, if you can't grab Herbie, if you want to have a piece of that side, I think he's the best way to do it at 300K.
Can you grab them both? Do you just go, look, I'm all in. I'm going Herbie and I'm going Cobbo?
The only thing that I wouldn't is if these cheapies that you stack up with go really mud, they have a buy in round 6. That is soon. So you're going to have 2 of those guys out there and you're going to have to play 2 of those cheapies. That's what I think you can. And I think if they go boom from the start, then you're going to benefit with it. So if they go boom for that first month, then it'll make up for taking that hit in round 6. But if they don't, then you're in trouble. So that's why I don't think I could have both. If they had a buy after round 8, then I think maybe the round 9, round 10 mark, then I could. But yeah, I think it's going to be one or the other. And I'm not saying that Cobbo's a better buy than Herbie, but you could have
if
a Cobbo.
You need the extra 325K somewhere else.
Well, you could have a Cobbo and a Carats. You know what I mean? It's more affordable to achieve something like that. So when I look at that, would I probably rather take a Cobbo and a Carats over Herbie and so much? Potentially as it sits, yeah, that's kind of what I've gone with. And it's hard. There's just so many options. But yes, it's a big green tick for Cobbo for me.
Yeah, I will say he reminds me, I'm going to do a couple of player comparisons here. He reminds me a lot of a Mike Cobbo, when Mike Cobbo was in his prime years for SuperCoach. And you'd watch him and go, wow, I got a hat trick from Micah. and he scores 75 points, like that's very Selwyn Cobbo. They're going to rely heavily on tries, and Selwyn has 20s and 30s in him all the time. And that is a big downside. Like, as much as we say Asako is really propped up and reliant on those goal kicking stats because he's not got many points elsewhere, Cobbo is the same, just with tries. He's very reliant on tries if you want him to score well, because he's not going to otherwise. He really should have a better base power. And look, it wasn't bad. If you go back to 2023, I think you get a really good indication. His base power was towards the mid-40s. He should be able to do that. Now, whether 2 years later he's motivated to get back to that, I'm not sure. If he isn't, there's 20s and 30s there. And if he's going to score a lot of tries, it's going to be fine, but it's not going to be as big a scoring as like a Herbie Farnworth or some of the other premium centre wings like a Carraz and stuff. But the difference is you're not paying a premium price for him. So you can afford to get him in the low 500s in a price tag and have him maybe have the odd poor game and only get, an 85 out of a hat trick, which is what happened with him the round one last year. If you go back, he scored 85 points by scoring 3 tries. That's kind of him. But your hope is that the doubles and even the hatties will be there more often in that Dolphins side than what it has been the last 2 years. And I think that's what you got to decide. We're going to take a quick break now because I have to mention a fantastic partner and sponsor of the Allstars podcast in oneworldcourier.com.au. Go jump on that website now and have a look. If the business that you work for or the business that you own has any freight or shipping needs, they're the people to go to because they are phenomenal. You go onto that website, you sign up for a free account, and it'll say, where did you hear about us? Put down NRL Allstars podcast. It'll take great care of you. Get a good rate card to start with and some cheap prices. But when you're on that website, if you just punch in whatever you're sending, send it, have a look, and it'll compare all the market for you on what couriers are available to ship. So you can have a look at maybe 10 different carriers or whatever that are available for whatever shipment that you want to do, and then pick whatever one you want. It'll have all the prices there and all the deals that you can pick from. They'll take care of all the shipping and everything for you. All you got to do is go on the website, punch everything in, pick who you want, and process it. So they are a fantastic site to go onto and a fantastic partner of the Allstars podcast. So jump on oneworldcourier.com.au today if you've got any freight or shipping needs. Mikey, we're going to move on now to another fallen gun, which is what Cobbo is, and have a look at Gilbert. And like Cobbo, I've kind of given Gilbert and him the benefit of the doubt of calling them falling guns. They've actually averaged 59 point something in their careers. So, what, off a 60-plus gun, but we'll call them fallen guns. Now, Gilbert is 460K, and I'm going to make this really short with Gilbert. Okay, I'm going to be mean to him in SuperCoach, but I don't mean it personally or him for his real-life output. I think he's important for the Dolphins. Plotter is the word that comes to mind immediately. He averaged 51 last year when he started at lock, and that was doing 64.4 minutes a game. For a lock, that is a terrible PPM. I just don't have any interest whatsoever. And 2023 was all lock, and he was much better at 59. But he's missed most of the last 2 seasons back-to-back now with knee and shoulder issues. So for a guy that's barely played in 2 years, and when he did play last year, had a terrible PPM when he was 13, in a roster that is stacked enough that doesn't need him to play huge minutes either. Like if he played 50 minutes last year, his average would be appalling in those games. But he was playing 64, thankfully. Like he's the type of guy that could end up averaging like a 39. And then all of a sudden you're not making any money on him. So I could be completely wrong. Maybe he'll go back to his origin days. Maybe he'll go back to 3 years ago, in which case there's a bit of value there. But I'm just at 40K. I have zero interest in Tom Gilbert.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't really have too much to add with Tom Gilbert. I think, we've seen what he can do in the past, but it's just, there's a lot more moving cogs. Tom Flegler's coming in. Like, what's the rotation going to be like this year? And it's more so just the fact that there's so many guys in this position that are options this year. We're spoiled for choice, and even some of the cheaper guys, like there's talk about Josh Patson winning that edge role, and if that's the case, like just spend 200K less and go him. And there's Lasardi. There's just too many options to even consider him. If he was
spend
front
40K
row,
more and get Halasima, at least you got some upside.
Yeah, exactly right. If he was available at front, like is he available at front row, or is he just second row only? I think he's second row only.
I think Gilbert's coming at just second row, but I'm going to double check for everyone.
Yeah,
just to
if
make
he
sure.
was front row only.
Yeah, it's just second row only. You can't even
so
have him at
if
front
he
row.
was front row only, then maybe you could consider him a little bit more if you think he's going to go back to that average. But yet again, like, not for me.
No, we're just going to finish on him. Just don't do it. We're looking at a potential pod here, and this pod I really liked in the middle of last year and got him in draft, and it really helped my team. Kurt Donahue, he really came on last year, really liked him. Last season, he averaged 51 points a game in 61 minutes. The 2 years prior, he only played 9 and 7 games, and they were mostly pretty much off the bench for low minutes in the odd 30. I liked how he played 22 games last year, Mikey, and he was able to do it playing a variety of positions. I think he was even on edge at some point for a little bit, and he played lock, and he also filled in the middle of the season at hooker as well. And when you're having a look at his games, like his hooker games, mid-season, round 10 to 18, where he spent time between hooker and lock, he averaged 62. It was only 53 as a starting 9, but needs to be said that that first game was a bit of an anomaly, and the 3 games after that, he was pretty much a 50 raw base average, which was really good. So he's got the potential to be 50 plus raw base at 80 minutes. He should get there pretty easy. And if he's alternating between the 9 and the 13 jersey, then that's going to be gold. Now, it's a bit of an awkward price because he's just sub 500. Plath is going to come back. We don't know whether he'll be used at 9 or whether he'll just be a 13. JMK is definitely going to be gone for the first couple months. So it's one of those ones that's hard because he could come out and play like 65 to 80 minutes round 1, score fantastic and go 70 plus, and you think it's golden. And then Plath could come back round 2 or something, and then all of a sudden he plays 50 minutes and it's a poor purchase. So he's going to be a pod, and if he did what he did in the middle of last year, you're going to have at least a dozen points of value, possibly even 15 plus if he improves as a player as well. And if his minutes go right up, he could be even he projects to a high 70s average if he goes 80 plus and did somewhat of what he did last year in some of those games. So there's a lot to like about young Donahue, but the fit and the role in a stacked team when everyone's back and healthy, that's going to be the issue with him early on.
Yeah, well, he's super pod at 1.4%. The only issue with him at the moment, or one of the issues with him at the moment, he's only second row only at 400k. So obviously, with the injuries and potentially starting, he'd probably get out of that second row hooker duel, which is handy, because if you did start him, I'd probably like him at the start at your hooker, but at the same time, you could interchange him down to second row at some point. Like, he's the kind of player that I would normally go after, and I like him. And to be honest, if he's performing real well and Plath comes back a little bit late, there's every chance that, because, Plath can play that lock role, that they'll just leave Donahue at hooker. It's when JMK comes back, that's when you know that he'll be shifting spots. And as long as he can keep a minute roll, the thing I like is he passed the eye test. He's a good footballer, and I think he's someone that's going to continue to get better. And every year you have these breakout SuperCoach players that get a lot better, and it's because they're getting a lot better in the NRL. So you've got to it's a little tactic that you can pinpoint some of these guys, and he's definitely one of them. Like, obviously, if he adds a hooker thing, he's someone that I definitely could consider. On the flip side, like, I've talked about all podcasts, the options, you've got guys like, Marnie, Simpkin, and not saying they're all great options, and obviously
Haywood.
Your guy, Reece Robson, and Haywood. So it makes it tougher. But to be honest, out of all those guys I mentioned, I think his base is safer if he's got that good role for the first weeks. I think he's more consistent to have to get you that, 50 to 60 points. And, with the attacking, like, could be, the odd attacking stat if they go bang from round 1. So, yeah.
I guess he's
I don't mind him.
Is the same combo position as what Plath is, though, which is really annoying. Like, Plath is a 9/13 and could spend time between both.
So they're both going to kind of hinder each other.
Yeah, or one of them's going to end up the dominant guy, and that's always going to be Plath because he is a better player, he's more experienced, and he's, they love him at the Dolphins, so he's ahead. The other thing that muddies the waters a little bit, and it goes really well as a segue because we're professionals here, we segue professionally, we know what we're doing on this podcast, goes really well into Lemuelu, who is also a pod. It's the same type of thing with Lemuelu as what it is with when you're looking at guys like Donahue. Like, how do the minutes work and how does this pack work? Because, like, you look at 13, right? And with Donahue, it's not just Plath. You've also got Knowles that has come in, who's been mostly a career 13 in the Super League for a long time now. And if he's on the bench, well, he's probably going to go to 13. And then you've also got like a Fini Fuiaki who is projected on the bench. And if they want to play Lemuelu 80 minutes or at least big minutes, then Fini Fuiaki is going to have to spend time in the middle. So where does that come in? Does he become a 13? Are they going to try and make him a front rower, even though he was an edge back rower last year? It's very messy. And Lemuelu is also someone like Donahue that I really like, and I probably like him more than Donahue. Like he's 529,000 as a second rower. He started 8 games last year, including one in Jersey 16 where he started. He averaged 58.5 points. Now, that wasn't huge value. You're only going to get a few points value on his starting price, but he only played 56 minutes to do that. So he had an elite PPM on an edge. If he went to 80 minutes on an edge, he actually projects out to 84 points per game last year, which, he's not going to do, but it gives you an idea. Like, if Lemuelu can play 80 minutes and have that role, he's not just got the elite work rate, he's also got try-scoring ability, and he was scoring tries last year, and he runs well off that edge. But again, you talk Donahue, you talk Lemuelu, then you look at, Plass coming in. What do you do with Fini Fuiaki? You've got these other guys like Gilbert that can be a 13 as well. And then you've got Knowles coming in as a 13 from overseas. How do you get all these guys minutes? And the short answer for me, Mikey, is I've just got to leave all of them. If Lemuelu plays 80 minutes to start with, good on him, but it's just too hard. If I knew 100% he was going to, I'd lock him in.
Yeah, he was just that guy. Like, while they were scoring points, he was just that second row. Like, when Kickout first come in, and he's just so big, hard to tackle, scores lots of tries, and he's got that in his game. And the fact that he only averaged 49 minutes last year compared to the previous season, 72 and 68. Like you said, if you can lock in an 80-minute role, he's someone you definitely would shoot for. 100%. The issue is, like you alluded to, they got too many mouths to feed. But yet again, like, we're talking about all these options, just going to show heading into the buys. They're going to be heavy on that target list. I know we said that draw is going to get tough with Penrith, Melbourne, like Warriors, Bulldogs. But at the same time, like, that's going to put people off. They're the time you're going to have to jump on when they're performing well, because you get a good. But he's someone that, depending on how they name their team, maybe you could take a flyer on, but I just don't know if the role that we want for him is going to be there from the start. But he's only at 0.4% ownership. Obviously, if it looks better on the teams.
On fire.
But that's what I mean. He starts off on fire in round 1, round 2, then he plays Sharks, Broncos. But if in round 1 and round 2 he starts off on fire and he's got a good minute role and the rotation's good for him, it doesn't matter who he's playing. You take him. But maybe he's just more that guy that, wait and watch. Maybe, you take one gun second rower at 600 or 700K and they don't work out. Maybe you could dip to them. Maybe some of these other mid-ranger guys that are around the 480K mark aren't going good. For Fifita gets injured, bang. Switch to Lem. It's not going to break the bank to do it. So, a lot of these Dolphins, he's in my black book and it's someone I'll be keeping an eye on for sure. But I doubt he's going to. I'll start with him just because of role. If the role looks good, another injury happens in the trials, all of a sudden I'll probably take a fly if the security looks like it's going to be better.
Yeah, I mean, it's this has been a really long podcast from the Dolphins, but it's because there's just so many options, but very few that you want to have probably round 1. There's probably like 3 genuine options for round 1, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't talk about the others or consider them. And I'm saying that from my opinion, and this is a good time to remind the new listeners about how this podcast works. We like to give a lot of info, and we like to not make your decisions for you. So very rarely do I say someone's a must-have or you really shouldn't have this guy. And, there's no 100% in SuperCoach most of the time. A lot of the time it's just about info and then you deciding with your gut and how you feel about guys. So, me and Mikey don't like a lot of these guys for round 1, but they're all options. So we've got to talk about them. And they might be an option for you and you might hit on them. I'm not ballsy enough to go a Lemuelu if he's named to start on an edge round 1. If you are, and he plays 80 minutes, you could benefit from it because he projects to be a really good 80-minute second rower if he gets that job. And we're going to finish on a couple of mids and cheapies in a moment after we talk about our mistake for this team if you're looking at round 1. And this is someone who I'm going to say, unlike everybody else we talk about, not to do this guy. I saw a side just today and I saw another one yesterday that had Daniel Saifidi starting front rower. It happens every year. And, people remember him from Origin and stuff as well and think, he's in a new side now, he's going to be better. Left Newcastle. 601,000, it's expensive. And people are going to say, look at last year. He had 8 games and he scored 2 tries in those games. And that is my argument for last year because people are going to say his average was good. And look, you're not wrong, guys. it was a good average last year. He went 62 points per game. He hasn't done that in the 5 years prior. That's really solid scoring, but it's an 8-game sample size. And in those 8 games, he had a 25% strike rate at scoring tries as a prop. He's not going to do that across a season. So he will be a 50 to 55 guy if he has a good year. The 3 years before last year, he was 44, 46, and 46. He only played 50 minutes a game last year. To play 52 minutes a game in 2022 and only score 46 a game, that tells you how low he can be as a super coach option. So I'm just going to say, Daniel Saifiti, don't do it. I'm going to assume, in the interest of time, Mikey agrees with me and can just nod, and then we can move on.
Yeah, I agree with you. No interest whatsoever.
Cheapies, though, Flegler's at the top of the list, mate. And look, I'm really torn on this one, so I'm going to let you try and convince me for a change here. He's
I've convinced you before.
462,000. Oh, no, sorry, he's not. He's cheaper than that. But he hasn't played for so long. I mean,
I get that, but this year, like, you know, we love a front rower that we know what they can do, right? And they're at a lower price. And look at Horsburgh. We knew at that price he was going to come and kill it. I know the difference is injury, where Horsburgh wasn't just injury. But at the price point, like, you know, most of us are going to pay up and start with someone like Payne Haas, which costs a lot of bank. Recently,
346k, just because I didn't mention the right price.
346. Very cheap. So for me, in my build, I did have him paired with another mid-range, and I was going to, like, I had Trey Meany in there, 440k, and I go, you know what, I need to try and shed money to strengthen other positions. And I thought, you know, there's guys like Colquhoun, Paseka. There's a lot of those range, and I go, you know what? I could easily have a mold where you go Flegler, Colquhoun, Paseka, and rotate the one that you think is going to score best. Because
yep.
And, you know, you don't have to play Flegler each round, but the price is too juicy for me not to ignore. I have him at the moment. Like, all of a sudden, if, you know, when UP Cora is going to be up for a stint and All Blacks Taha is at like 360k potentially starting on an edge for Brisbane. If that happened, then maybe I'd be a bit more interested in him over Flegler. But back to Flegler. Like, I know he's been injured for so long, but if he can come back and kick on, like, I reckon it's going to be, like, maybe pin back expectations, can be a slow burn at the start. But once he starts to get into it, he's someone, like, you know, that you could maybe just purchase it from the start and you won't have to worry about it, because eventually over time, as he gets, you know, minutes back into his legs, you're back used to it. You know, we know what he can do. Like, he had a good work rate and a good base. And yeah, with that bench makeup, like we already alluded to, like, I think maybe he doesn't get a stack of minutes, but at the price point, I would rather someone like Flegler than someone at 230k, like a Royce Hunt from last year. I'd rather spend the extra 100.
Don't ever talk about Royce on this podcast again.
I didn't have him. I didn't have him last year, Royce Hunt. I've learned from the past couple of years, don't take that guy. I'd rather spend up 100k and take someone like Flegler.
But he's trading the house down, Mikey. He's number one in the gym. Look, he's the strongest man in the league.
And there is one like that Hopgood from the Knights at 230k, gets a spot and he starts killing it. It's not hard for me to go Flegler down to him and bank 120k, but I'd rather spend the extra 100k on these front rows to make my life easy in the front row. That is the whole point of me trying to pick it. And I just think the price and the potential. He's at 19.6%, so he's not a pod. He's not super highly owned either, but look, I like it for now. Like, I think
you don't need him to be a pod. You don't need him to be a pod because you're getting him for the
fix
cash.
a headache in that position. Yep. And you know, over time, if he can get from 340 to 450, I'll be happy with that. And if he's a guy that, you know, I have to play on buy rounds, like when my main guys are out, and he gets a 40 to 45. Perfect for 340k. I'm happy with that. Like, you don't have to have the world of every player you purchase score 100 points. It's not how it works. Like, some of them, like, you know, these different positions play different roles, and front row is one of them. And you just want to kind of avoid a guy that's going to give you 10 to 15. And I guess the main concern with him is probably injury. But I'll flip over to you now, Barnesy.
Yeah, look, I think he's an option just because of his price.
And
I
previous
think.
role.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to throw out the red flags for me. Most of them you can just forget about if you want, just because at 346k he's cheap enough to still make money. But there is a lot of flags. And the first one is injury. He's played 4 games in 2 years. He's missed basically 2 seasons. And the second one is he's coming into a side after missing 2 seasons where they've got a stacked pack. They've got so many options there. So they don't need to give him big minutes. Then the third flag is he's actually not as good as we like to remember. He's never really scored that great. He's got a 59 average sitting there as his last season, and people are going to look at that and go, well, that's pretty good, especially for the price point. That 59 average has only got the 4 games in it. And when you go before that, he's basically for 4 years been a sort of low to mid 40s minute guy when he's healthy and a low 40s scorer in SuperCoach. The 2023 back, he's gone 47 points, 46 points, so a bit higher. But then you go back to years before and he was, 42, 44 points. 43, 45 points. And again, it's similar minutes, Mikey. All those minutes are in that 42 to 46 type of range. And I don't see him getting more than those minutes. And his output is not mega then. And then all of a sudden, you got a guy that's maybe averaging 40, 42, even, in his healthy, good minute days. If they go 8 minutes less or something like that to try and manage his minutes, those weird things that coaches do where they're like, I'll start Flegler, but I'll bring him off at the 18, 19 minute mark, and then I'll put him on again at like the 63 minute mark. Like you have stuff like that happen in the rotation, and then all of a sudden he's a guy scoring in the 30s and he's going to actually lose money. I know I'm talking a lot about the numbers and stuff that he did before and concerns. I'm sounding like I really don't want him, but I'm kind of torn because there's all that there, but 340 something thousand is cheap. So maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe they just pump him up to 50 minutes a game and they don't care, but he just hasn't really done that before. So as a numbers guy, it really is hard for me to start with him.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, but like I said, if you really didn't want to spend any money on that second front rower, you could go this 300k, strategy, which something I've switched to maybe only this week. So fits the bill, but I get all those negatives, and unfortunately, if you can, what season have you ever gone into without taking a risk on that 4 front rower?
Sometimes you just don't
that
care.
Position, that's what that position is. So I'd rather take one that we know that can be better.
But probably what I would say with that is if I'm going to say, look, that 4th front row spot I really don't care about, I'd almost just go for someone cheaper and take a flyer like a Navali who's 80k cheaper in the 200s at Manly. If he's got a bench spot, you bank on that PPM and a bigger role. You mentioned Paseka as well. A lot of people are going 2 good front rowers. So at the moment, I'm not on board with a May Huss combo at front row. I just think it's a bit too much. But I do have Huss and Kolomatangi at the moment. And then if I've got Colquhoun as a third guy, I can go a guy in the 200s for that 4th spot and not spend up on a Flegler. So
yeah, I think that build works if you're getting 2 good front rows. If you're not like myself at the moment, then I think it's handy to have a 4th playable option if you need it. Because, in case Colquhoun or Paseka aren't as good, Paseka's also got those injury concerns. That's why I think if you're not going to take someone better, 3 of them make sense to me for that build. It just kind of gives you more options if it doesn't go great, which it's always good to have contingency plans in place. It's key to doing consistently well.
Oh, true, 100%. And Flegler is definitely an option. I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about him because I'm torn myself, but because he's very highly owned. So, the masses are jumping on, and it could work out. There's a few things to think about if you've got some other options there where it may not as well. But that is the podcast for the Dolphins. It's a long one. It's because the Dolphins are more relevant than ever this year. So well done, Dolphins fans. Well done to the Dolphins Club over at Redcliffe, which is where they're from because they are the Redcliffe Dolphins. And well done to Mikey. Great episode, mate. Thanks for jumping on board.
Always a pleasure, mate. It was a long one. I knew when you gave me the Dolphins, I was like, it's probably not a good one for me and you because we'll ramble on. But
I just kept adding names and names and names, and I just couldn't believe how many were relevant. The Dolphins have got a lot of good players for this year. And even though we don't like a lot from round 1, they're all going to be relevant at some point in the first couple of months.
Yeah, and the fact they play all 3 big buy rounds, they're going to be options. And, you like to talk about, your motto on these preseason podcasts is talk about every option. Well, we have to. We can't break the motto, and that is what we've done today.
Certainly have. Shout out to young Keeley. I really like Oren Keeley, but we didn't get a chance to talk about you. You could be good at some point too. But if you want to be listening to the Allstars podcast and supporting us, make sure you subscribe and follow. We are on social media everywhere, Instagram, Facebook, X. But most importantly, please subscribe to YouTube, to Spotify, to iTunes, where you can either watch or listen to the shows. We'll be pumping out another couple of team previews in the next few days. But in the meantime, enjoy tinkering with your side. Can't wait to talk more footy again with everyone real soon.
You'll never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid.